My name is Ben Bradshaw. I'm an associate professor of geography and serving as the assistant vice president of graduate studies at the University of Guelph. The setback I'm keen to share with you might seem minute, but for an academic and someone whose reputation is built on publications, it's actually an important example, and I learned a lot from it. It occurred back when I was a professor at Simon Fraser University in probably about 2000, 2001. And I got feedback on an article I had submitted to a prestigious journal. And it was the first time I had developed a so-called solo authored or single authored paper. So when you're doing a PhD, you typically publish with your supervisor. And post-PhD, it's critical that you do your own thing. So it was my first attempt at a solo authored paper. And when I got the feedback from the reviewers, and I'm not sure if you know, but in the academic journal world, these reviewers are considered to be blind. You don't know who they are, they don't know who you are. And academics are pretty famous for letting things, letting loose with criticism. And if it's a double blind situation, they really let loose with criticism. So when I read the feedback on this paper, I interpreted it in the most terrible of ways. Every criticism I magnified, and I started thinking this is impossible. I can't do anything with this paper. It won't get published. I'm dating myself, but the feedback was provided via post. So I had an envelope with pages of feedback, and I took that envelope and I put it on the top possible shelf in my office. I'm a tall guy, and this was even out of reach of me almost. And I just left it there. It sat for maybe 4 or 5 months, which in the world of publishing is the stupidest thing you can do. But I was defeated. So 5 months later, for some reason, I picked it up, or rather I reached way up and grabbed it, and I reread the criticism. And for some reason, the criticism felt completely different. It wasn't so harsh. It wasn't so bad. I could see the light. In fact, I could even see the way I could address all the criticisms. And that's actually what editors who provide that feedback expect of someone who's trying to get a paper published in their journal, that they're going to address concerns and make the paper better. And so within 3 weeks, I had refined the paper, I had addressed all the concerns, I resubmitted, and within 2-3 months, it was published. So again, it might seem like a small example, but for academics, getting published is your currency. And for me, it was a huge lesson. One, recognizing that when you first get critical feedback, you're going to feel like crap, and it's okay. I'm not even suggesting that somehow you're supposed to respond right away. Put it on a shelf, but don't put it on a shelf for 4 or 5 months. Put it on a shelf for 24 to 48 hours. And then pick it up when you're feeling good and see, okay, what can I do to address these criticisms? How can I make this product better? That's ultimately going to be a reflection on me. Wow, thank you, blind reviewers, for giving me this feedback that's going to make my paper better. And so I've used that to date. I still, of course, read critical feedback and go, what? They didn't get it, or how did I, But I have learned to revisit it more promptly and just go through that process. And we always view our colleagues as smarter than us and more talented than us. And that is a dangerous perspective. I think all of us are constantly comparing ourselves, whether it's in high school based on grades or appearance and eventually over time you start to get a sense of self, hopefully, and that sense of self means that what's most important, obviously, is how you view yourself and your own sense of self. And so over time as an academic, I've learned who are the comparators that I am willing to subject myself to, if you will. I want to be as good as them, but I don't need to be as good as them. They're doing something else. They're maybe not teaching, or maybe they're not committed to doing some undergraduate counseling, which I value. Or maybe they aren't as foolish as me and haven't had 4 children, which require some time away. So maybe I won't try and be competitive with that person, because that person has chosen a different path. I'm going to compare myself to those people who are on maybe a similar path. And I think if you've got the right comparator group, then a little bit of competition for the sake of driving excellence, that's healthy, And of course, when when you embrace it in a healthy way, when your competitor does well, you say, well done. And then when you do well, hopefully they'll return the favor. So I'm not suggesting you can't ever compare, but make sure your comparisons are reasonable, realistic, and actually drive good things instead of driving, an attitude of I'm never going to be good enough. I'm impressed that your generation actually, in my sense, does better with failure than many of us. Or at least you've got, seemingly, at least my 4 kids have a healthier sense of self and individualism. Growing up as a teenager in the 70s and 80s, there was a ton of conformity. I'm so impressed with the degree of diversity and variety and self-expression that exists today. So my hope is that this generation is similarly sort of more open-minded to what a career is supposed to look like. Certainly, if you looked at LinkedIn profiles of a 25-year-old, some of my former students, they might already have 3-4 jobs on there, each one 8 to 9 months. Whereas, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, it's like 3 jobs over 20 years. It's like, oh my goodness. So I guess my sense is that setbacks are part and parcel of a life that's probably more varied and more interesting, maybe a little less secure, but certainly more entrepreneurial. And so my sense is that this generation, your colleagues, are hopefully better set up to deal with setbacks and to achieve great things than we were. So I'm not, again, professing to be expert in the world of setbacks. I'm forever impressed, for example, if I'm looking to take on a student and they've sent in materials and maybe I've interviewed them, and ultimately I decide that I'm not going to take them on. It doesn't seem like a good fit, or maybe their competencies aren't what I hoped. And they respond with a, thank you for that opportunity. I especially appreciated, this. And suddenly I'm like, wow, maybe I made a mistake. I should be looking at this file again. Maybe next year I can take them on because of, don't look necessarily to me for guidance. I think most of you are doing so well with setback and recognizing it's just part and parcel of life. Certainly I appreciate that I've had lots of advantages. I've had good support growing up. I now work in a supportive environment that not everyone will be equally equipped to deal with failure. I think I've probably have taken advantage of the supports that have been in place, and some people may not have those sort of supports. So I guess I would add that try and cultivate those supports. You can't always do it on your own. Reach out to a friend. If we only sort of connect with our friends when we're feeling good, well, then they're not really friends. You don't want to burden your friends. You can't be the person that always unloads awfulness. But certainly count on friends and family for these reasons, because we all need to support one another.